Well, good morning, kids. Oh, you guys are so cool. Hey, it is Labor Day. I am wearing a t-shirt and my Lucky Chuckies today, so this is a special day. And it's especially special. A, you showed up, which is awesome on Labor Day weekend, and B, because I am wearing the shirt that I am. So I see some Redemption Kid shirts out there. Give a holla to everybody in Redemption Church that are working with kids. That is awesome. And part of the reason I'm wearing the shirt is I want to encourage all of us. If Redemption is your home, you consider this your church, but you have not or do not serve in kids ministry, I would love to give you the challenge to consider that, right? And there's all sorts of ways you can serve there. You can make it as simple as just you're helping out in the classroom, or you can hold babies or teach classes or help with supplies and crafts or whatever else. There's so many ways. And here's why this is important. A couple of things. One is kids matter, right? They just matter. And one of the things that is interesting about the Christian faith is that we, for 2,000 years, have had a very simple agenda. We take the message of God and we pass it to the next generation, right? That's what we do. We don't try to tinker with it, tamper with it, make it hip or cool or whatever. We pass the message along. And children's ministry is one of the great ways that we're able to do that, to really ground kids in the Bible and who Jesus is, and helping them see that over the course of their life, there's many paths that they could attempt to live, but the best path to walk on is the one where life is better with Jesus, right? And so that's what we seek to teach our kids in our kids ministry. And so from that, I just want to encourage you to consider serving in that area. One of the things you may not know, this is a very cool thing as far as the church, but from this time last year to now, our church has grown over 30%. We have grown a lot. Yeah, so it's very cool. People are like, why are we going to 2 services? I don't get to see everybody. Because we couldn't add more people if we didn't go to 2 services. So we went to 2 services, and we've seen a lot more growth over the course of the year. And with that, a lot more needs in our children's ministry and that kind of thing. So just really pushing that way. So if you're interested, on our app, our church has an app. And on the app, there is RC News. If you click that tile, the very first announcement that's there is all about children's ministry. And you'll see a link and everything else. And even if you're saying, hey, I just want to go back and try it for Sunday just to kind of observe, see if this is going to be my thing or not, that's a way you can do it and everything else. But it's a great place to invest. I mean, think about it, how much as adults we talk about and we emphasize that kids matter, the next generation matters, making sure we leave them something that they could really work with. And I guarantee you there is nothing more important than their spiritual health and development. So if you go, man, for the sake of the kids, then do children's ministry. That is for the sake of the kids, because the kids are awesome and they love to hear from you. And don't be intimidated by them. I know you're but I'll go in there, and they'll be like, well, why? And I'll be like, because Jesus says, and it might feel a little intimidating, but it's really an awesome thing. So please consider that if that is something maybe you feel kind of is in your wheelhouse, led to whatever else, that'd be excellent. So other than that, I'm going to get praying. I've given the announcement. I'm going to wear the billboard the whole morning. So it will haunt you the entire time. All right, so let's go ahead and pray together and we'll get underway. Jesus, thank you so much for your word. And I thank you for the fact that your word, it does push on us. And it does challenge us, and it does remind us of things that we sometimes they just fall out of our head. You know what I mean? We just get sucked into the everyday, and we forget some real basic ideas. And yet you are patient with us, and you show us grace because we are imperfect people. And yet in your perfection, you keep working on us and in us and through us. And I thank you for that. So I pray this morning that we would really take in something that is so critical and valuable, and ultimately what we seek, even though sometimes we're resistant. And from that we would realize that life is better with you, Jesus. And so, again, just do what you do so well today. We ask these things in your good and awesome name. Amen. So last weekend was kind of a cool weekend for the Boswell clan. And the Boswell clan is not quite the Boswell clan anymore. My oldest daughter has gotten married, so it's the Boswells, Pratts, and there's all these other things, right? So it's kind of like the Boswells plus. But we were all together last weekend. So my daughter that's WSU, she came over. And then my married daughter just moved back to Duvall. And my son and everybody else. And we all climbed into the Boswell family truckster, which is a very fuel-efficient V10 Ford Excursion. Very environmentally sound. And we all went to Monroe to the Evergreen State Fair. All right? Yes, party! All right, so we went to the fair, and here's the funny thing about the fair, right? The fair is one of those events where you're like, oh, this is going to be so fun. We're going to have such a good time. This is going to be a blast. We're going to eat good food, ride on rides, see animals, do the whole thing. And so the whole thing sucks you in as nothing but an awesome weekend event, right? And then you get there, all right? You get there, and you're like parked so far from the gate that it's like kind of the children of Egypt getting out of the 40 years to find the gate and then wait for your tickets, you know? And then you get in there, and by God's good blessing, we apparently became the gravity well of all smoke for all fires in the entire western side of the United States. So there's all this smoke in the air at the fair, so you're ingesting all of that. Then when we were there, they actually had a NASCAR race going. So you're there, and the whole time you're just like, roar, roar. You know, you're just like totally amped up on noise, plus smoke, plus the odor of the animals is so invigorating. And then you have that, and then you eat the food, and the food is gonna be so fun. And so you go, oh, let's go ahead and get that giant bucket of donuts, right? So you get the giant bucket of donuts, and then you eat those, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need something savory, so I need a Philly cheesesteak. So you go and you get a Philly cheesesteak, and you're like, oh, I need something sweet to chase all that cheese. So you go get a funnel cake, and then you eat a funnel cake, you're like, I need something, I need a kosher dog, you know, and then you're going back and forth getting all the different foods and everything else, and you're taking in the smoke, and you're taking in the odors of the animals and the loud noises, and you go on rides and, you know, all that. And then you wake up the next day and you feel like you have a hangover, you want to die, and you didn't have a sip of alcohol, all right? But I remember last Sunday I woke up, I'm like, I don't want to do church. I want to die. Jesus, take me home. I don't believe in a pre-trib rapture, but I would take it right now. You know, like that's the way it makes you feel. And it's funny because I'm like, it's so weird how you get kind of sucked in under all of those like labels. It's gonna be fun, it's gonna be refreshing, it's gonna be enjoyable, it's gonna be thrilling, it's gonna be exhilarating, it's gonna be thriving. And then it is what it is. Reality sets in. See, and I told somebody last week, I said, went to the fair, here is my experience, it will be a sermon illustration next week. And so here it is today. It is a sermon illustration. Because what I find is there is a parallel between that and life in general. See, I find in life that oftentimes we are pitched ideas that don't quite provide what they pitch. Right? They pitch us things like, man, if you do this, you're going to be happy. If you do this, it's going to be fun. If you do this, you're going to be content. If you do this, it's going to be uplifting and it's going to be thrilling and it's going to be whatever. And then you do it and it doesn't quite live up to the expectation. So, for example, I use this a lot, but Disneyland tells you they are the happiest place on earth. They are the happiest place. And then you get there and you're like, I think you are the slowest place, the most expensive place. I really think my kids are finding you to be the saddest place on earth because they've been in line for 2.5 hours for Dumbo, all right? So, and suddenly it's like, well, maybe not so much. Or how about this one? Seattle's best coffee. Really? You think you're the best coffee in all of Seattle because you're Seattle's best coffee? Great Wolf Lodge, the most fun place you can go in Washington. Have you been to Great Wolf Lodge? Right? You're like, you walk into the building, the chlorine literally contaminates your brain. Some kid's peeing in the pool. You're like, yeah, most fun place in Washington next to the DMV, you know, like super fun, right? So we're told these are all the things, but then they don't quite pay off, right? So from this in life, where I find that just in general, life is always saying this is going to be it, right? We have then reactions. Some of us, in the face of those things, we become cynical. Somebody's just trying to sell me on the next gimmick or gizmo or whatever, and it doesn't pay off, and so we just become kind of cynical about things. That's one type of person. Another type of person becomes kind of the chaser, right, of those things. So they go, no, I'm going to keep going to Disneyland every year until it becomes the happiest place on earth. Step lively, we're having fun, happy, kids, let's go, right? And so we chase, and we try to find the next thing that's going to make us feel that sense of thriving in life. And so you have the chasers. But then you also have people that calibrate. And they calibrate in such a way where they say, you know what? I'm not going to become cynical, and I'm not going to become a chaser. Rather, I'm going to look for alternative ways that sincerely produce what it is all these other things claim to provide. Where you come to this place where you say, I think there is something more, but what I'm told is the route to the more isn't quite the route, and so I need to start looking for alternative ways to live in a world that is non-climactic often. It's all about finding the true alternative. And so this morning we're going to talk about that. We're going to look at this idea of the things that point us in the direction of what most people truly seek in life, which is joy. And so we're looking at StreetWise thriving. Thriving. Now, if you have our app, in our app there's a section for notes, and you can just follow along with the notes. The verses are all in there. There's little sections that you can fill in as well as we are going through this. But I want us to really try to pin some of this down, because I want us to understand that when we look at the Bible, it is written for our good. Jesus came to give us life, not just after life. He came to give us life in life. And so it's not just about surviving this life. It's about thriving in life. That's what he desires for us. He wants true joy in a draining world, and so we want to understand how we do that. And the place I want to start, if you're following along in the notes, is number one, I want us to understand that God built feelings. God built our feelings. Now, I'm emphasizing this. I'm going out of my way because I find that in churches where theology matters, and theology matters to us, and we really dig the Bible, and we want to make sure we teach it accurately, sometimes in those environments, feelings are sort of pushed to the side for thinking. Thinking is what matters, and feelings are sort of secondary. Right? So even sometimes in those environments, people will say, like, it doesn't really matter what you feel, it matters what you think. Or I saw a Babylon Bee article this week, and it was kind of making fun of people's faith, and they wanted to have bracelets that, what would Jesus feel? And it was sort of this slight on, well, who cares what Jesus would feel? It matters what Jesus thinks. And even sometimes people say people live too much from their feelings, and they don't think enough in life. Now, I'm not saying that all of those things don't have place and truth and everything else, but I want us to be clear that we are built in God's image, right? So the first piece of literature in your Bible, first page, tells you that is your structure. You are made to mirror God. And while God is a profoundly thinking God, God is also a profoundly feeling God. He is thinking in that he is the Word, and the Word speaks with authority, and that is it. But he's feeling in places like Zephaniah 3, where it says God sings with delight over his kids. God is a passionate God as well as a thinking, cerebral God. And so we are to mirror that, right? Now, the reality, though, in that is that we are also imperfect people. We're broken, we're sinful, we're fallen. Pick your synonym. And so sometimes our feelings really serve well, and sometimes they don't serve us as well. So when you're looking through the Bible, you see like mirroring God's feelings in a good way. When God makes the woman, wakes up the man looks at the woman and is like, wow, that's a feeling. In Hebrew, it's just, that is amazing. Whatever it is you just made and gave to me, this is fantastic. It's a good feeling. It's a positive feeling. Or when we look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, where it says not only are we supposed to obey, but we're supposed to obey with a joy and gladness of heart. Like that's the enriching nature of obedience. Those are positive emotions. But we also look in the Bible where the woman says, all right, God, I know I'm supposed to take your knowledge in your timetable, but I want to do it in mine. And it was desirous. She felt the need to take of knowledge outside of due season. That was an emotion gone awry. Or Moses, when he's angry toward the end of his life at these morons he's been dealing with for years, and he loses his temper, and it changes the trajectory of his own story. I mean, emotions are tricky, right? They're tricky for us. They're hard. I mean, I think about it as a teenager, right? Most of my really poor decisions in life were driven by emotions, right? I jumped into the car of my emotional makeup and I ripped down the road and left my brain in the driveway. You know, it was just a mess. But that's not just for teenagers. I find as an adult, I might have a little bit more life experience and a little bit more sensitivity and sensibility in some things, but there's other things in my world where I still let the emotions get the best of me. I don't see things clearly. I get spun up about stuff. I get discouraged by stuff, whatever else. Emotions are all tricked out. And so Solomon knows this. Solomon knows this. He knows that emotions are really important to our composite, and he knows they're real tricky for us to deal with. And so he's trying to thread that needle for his kid, right? And say, I want you to maximize this potential for life that is thriving. And I want you to do it in part because I want you to have emotional and mental health and stability. So I want to give you some wisdom on how you then should live in a world that is not always satisfying. A world that is not always good at maximizing and optimizing joy. And so talking to his son, he gives this little bit of wisdom in Ecclesiastes chapter 10. He says, a party gives laughter, and wine gives happiness, and money gives everything, so live by that. You're like, no, it's not in there. Yeah, it's in the most meaningless book of the Bible. We're in Proverbs, a meaningful book, so don't worry about that verse right there, right? Now, that's a cynical guy. Right? In Ecclesiastes, he has these moments of cynicism, and then he has these moments of clarity, and that's a cynicism moment. And yet what's weird about that verse, which funny that it's in the Bible, that's funny. Don't make it your life memory verse, by the way. But it's honest and true to form. A lot of people go, that's how I'm going to find a thriving life, right? And there are some truths to all of those things, but they're not thriving truths. They're not holistic truths. They're not enduring truths. So we want to look at Proverbs that gives us enduring truths to live by. And as we do this, I want us to start by a certain principle I think we have to lock down if we're understanding maximizing and optimizing joy. I want us to look at the difference between, ready? Number 2 in your notes, fun and joy. Because there is a difference between fun and joy. Now, I want to be really clear because I know some people, this is what happens, people leave and they're, you know what Pastor Matt said? And I'm like, I didn't say that. You interpreted it, I didn't say it. So some people are going to leave and say, Pastor Matt doesn't like fun, thinks fun's sin, and nobody should have fun. Pastor Matt thinks fun's awesome. I think fun is great, right? I'm not saying fun is bad, so I'm going to be clear. Matt said fun is great, not saying it's bad. Fun is fun, right? It's all of that. So I just want to be clear on that. But here's what I'm going to say about fun. It's not particularly deep. It's not deep. So what I mean by that is for fun to be engaged in, for you to say, hey, that was fun, I'm having fun, isn't this fun? It takes a stimulus that is purely driven to that goal. It's very narrow, and in that sense, it doesn't have a lot of real stability to stand on. It's not bad, but it's not strong. It has like this high center of gravity that's easily toppled. You can move from fun to no fun really, really quick. Just watch all those crazy videos on YouTube where people are having fun until somebody falls or crashes or whatever, and then it's no longer fun, right? So fun doesn't have bandwidth. So with that, fun can be fine, but fun is geared toward our desire to gratify, right? So fun is about gratify. Joy, on the other hand, may not be as sensationalistic as fun, but it's deeper, right? It's lower to the ground. It has a stability for life. So fun may gratify, joy will satisfy, right? Fun, gratify, joy, satisfy. So let me give you some examples. For the women in the room that have had children, you would not look at that day that your child was born and say, that was so fun. But you probably would say that was one of the most joyful days of your life. Right? So it's different. Right? Or here's the weird paradox. You can have sometimes joy and grief rolled into one. They can coexist. I see this at funerals of believers, where the family's like, you know what, we're sad, we're going to miss them. There's grief, and yet there's also joy. They're with Jesus, and they're relieved of their suffering. Joy and grief can coexist together. Nobody looks at a funeral and says, that was really fun, right? So they're different, right? They're different. And like I said, while joy may not be as sensational. It's actually more regimented toward grounding, right? So gratify, satisfy is all founded in this whole thing. In fact, if I was to give you a little bit of an illustrative parallel, I would say fun is like carbs and joy is like protein. Now, I know some of you think, but carbs are evil. No, they're not. Carbs are not evil, right? But they do different things. So carbohydrates, they give you what you need for fuel, for energy, for short bursts of time, right? And you need that in life. But protein is going to give you the stuff that builds muscle and deeper endurance for a longer haul. So one is short term, one is long term. And so in that sense, we have to start to look at our lives and say, hey man, where do I want to make those investments? So do I want most of my life to be dominated by fun or most of my life to be dominated by joy? And I would say, well, joy is going to give you something that fun doesn't fully give, right? There's going to be some limitations in this. Now again, I'm not saying fun is bad. Not saying fun is wrong. You need carbohydrates in your diet. You need fun in your life diet. You need fun. You need to do things that are fun, but you have to have them in perspective. I think that's part of the problem. We'll get into that in a little while, but I think sometimes we ask fun to do things it doesn't have the capacity to do. We want it to go beyond the boundaries of its function. And so this is where we have to kind of pull stuff back in and say, wait, I need to look at fun a little bit differently. And part of that is realizing that in the context of fun, some fun is totally fine. It's good, clean fun, and those are things that we should have in some level of measure in our life. But then other fun, we maybe need to think through a little differently. Because here's the thing I'm going to tell you about fun. Two things you got to know about fun. Some fun, ready, is sin. Some fun is sin. And what I'm saying there is, and I know this isn't cool for a pastor to say, but sin, it's fun. It's fun. If it wasn't fun, we wouldn't do it. But clearly, if fun is about gratify, and sin is about gratify, they have a relationship. And I know of many people that are like, hey man, I'm going to get wasted because it's so fun. I'm going to do something stupid because it's so fun. Sin is fun. But here's the thing for us to kind of realize, not just as Christians, as all human beings, there is this truth that sin is like drinking salt water. So you have an 8-ounce glass of salt water and you drink it, and while in one sense you've just hydrated yourself with 8 ounces of water, you've actually just succeeded in accelerating dehydration more than hydration, right? Because the salt content is going to suck more than it gives, right? Fun sin takes more than it gives. It eventually wears you out. So if your ultimate goal is to thrive, to have true joy in life, true peace, true contentment, and so you use sin as the apparatus of fun to get to that goal, it will fail to get you to your goal. It will actually get you further away from the very goal that you seek, right? So that's the danger of sin fun. And that one's a little bit more clear for us. The other one, though, is a different kind of fun. I'm going to call it distraction fun. And distraction fun are those events, stuff, outings, experiences, toys, hobbies, sports, whatever it is, that are good, clean fun. It's good, clean fun. But you make those the objectives of your life, throughout life. So I go to work and I slug it out so I can clock out and have some good, clean fun. And all I want to do is every chance I get, have good, clean fun. And I fill that up more than I fill it up with the protein of spiritual joy. I just go for the carbs of fun. Well, over the course of time, life gets wonky if we do it that way. But we tend to. We miss a lot of church for fun. We miss our groups for fun. We miss reading the Bible for fun. We miss praying because we're going to go do something fun. And again, fun isn't bad if it's good, clean fun, but can still drain away when we're trying to get life's purposes and refreshing out of fun. So from these two designations of fun, I would say sin fun is like eating Twinkies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Right? Lots of quick jolts, lots of quick drops, tastes really good, but it's not going to sustain you. And then it's weird, after a while, you might be like, I don't want any more Twinkie. I don't want any more funnel cake at the fair, right? Or whatever it is, right? But then you're like, well, one more bite, right? Because it kind of sucks you in too. Right? And so that's true. But the good, clean, fun part, if you're trying to make it more than what it's designed to be, it can be like dried fruit. Here's the thing about dried fruit. We all think dried fruit's good for us. We want to give our kids dried fruit. You should look up some stuff on dried fruit. It's not that good for you. It has the illusion because it's good, clean snacks. But in reality, it's just packed full of sugars. We kind of dry out all the other things that help us with digestion and things like that. And in the end, it's in the top 10 worst alleged good foods, right? But it seems okay, seems good, seems right. So in the same likeness, again, the more we just pursue fun, more fun all the time, more fun. It's not bad. Doesn't satisfy, doesn't build us up. It's not the spiritual protein that we need. We need the stuff of joy. So what's the stuff of joy? Well, today I'm going to give you 3 rules for the pursuit of joy. Just 3. With a bunch of subpoints, so it's like 42 when I'm done. All right, so, because you know me. All right, so 3 rules for the pursuit of fun. But really, the fundamental 3 are very, very basic. It's so rudimentary. A lot of us are going to be like, oh, yeah, I know that, right? But here's what I know. I know that we forget. That's what I know, all right? So here's the first one that you have to think about, I have to think about in the pursuit of joy. First thing, instigate the things that cultivate joy. In other words, you have to make a proactive decision. Just as much as you're going to buy tickets for the event, just as much you're going to get in the car to go to the thing, just as much you're going to make sure you have this hobby in your life, you have to instigate the things that produce joy. Now, under this is 4 different passages out of Proverbs and 4 things I want to emphasize. First of all, you want to realize that the route to joy and health in your life comes through obedience. Obedience is the route to joy. It says, where there is no prophetic vision in Proverbs 29:18, the people, they cast off restraint. But blessed, happy, joyful is he who keeps the law. Now, here's something I want to say about the sins that we hold on to in life, whether they're bitterness sins, lust sins, greed sins, anger sins. I know what God tells me to do. I should give sins and I don't give. I should serve, but I don't serve. I should go to church, but I don't go to church. It doesn't matter the sin. There's omission, commission sins. Don't do's, do do's, and we don't do, and all that stuff, right? So all of that. Here's the thing about sin. Your sin in your life, this is a super profound idea. I want to make sure you track with it. It's going to be hard for people that aren't theologically minded in the room. I get it, but your sin is like BO, all right? Just like BO. Body odor. Yeah, I know, pretty deep, right? So, over the course of time, it spreads. And it kind of absorbs everything around you and everyone around you. And it fills the room of your life with the stench of your BO, all right? And that's what sin is in our life. It's like BO, right? And what I mean by that is you think, oh, it's just this one sin over here. It's private, it's secret, nobody really knows. I'm keeping it to myself. It's not going to affect everything. No, it does. Eventually your pits spread out, all right? So it's the same thing. And pretty soon it's affecting other stuff, right? It affects your attitudes and your perspectives and time. It can draw in other sins into your life and everything else. And so this is why he knows that, man, blessed is the person who keeps the law. Right? Because it keeps the contamination from multiplying. And so we have health through obedience. Another thing this dad tells his son is, he says, you want to have true joy? You need to help through your generosity then. If you want to have joy in life, he says, whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed, happy, joyful is the one who is generous to the poor. You know, this is why Scrooge was such a punk, right? He had all the money to be comfortable. He had no cares and worries in the world, but he wouldn't share with anybody, and he was bitter in his prosperity, right? This is so different than like what I see in the New Testament. There's a letter that is written to a group of Christians who are struggling with generosity, and the writer, his name's Paul, he references another group of Christians who were just getting throttled, losing their jobs, couldn't sell in the marketplace, were utterly poor, and he says, and they're given like crazy, and they have a joy that's so profound. I've never seen anything like it before. It's in the book of 2 Corinthians chapter 8. He says, those people have joy because they give in their extreme poverty. Right? And that totally blows our mind because like, no. If you give away all your money, you can't be joyful. Wow, look at that lie. If you were that generous, you wouldn't have any for yourself, and then you wouldn't have any joy. And Paul's like, I know some people that would beg to differ with you. No, I'm not trying to say you give it all away. That's not my point. My point is giving, though, is the route to joy. Solomon knows it. Paul knew it. We know it in our heart. That's why we tell our kids every Christmas, it's better to give than receive. Hope you live that. Don't just say that, because it's true. Third thing in this little list is that we can find healing through peacemaking. This is the route to joy in our life. It says, deceit is in the heart of those who devise evil, but those who plan peace have joy. I want you to notice it says you have to plan peace. You know why you have to plan peace? It's because we're awesome at fighting. We're awesome at discord and division and everything else. So I'm going to give an illustration to this little passage right here that I think hits close to home for most every one of us in the room, which is either the relationship between spouses or the relationship between parents and kids. Right? Because those are the relationships where over the course of our life we have the potential for the most friction. And it's in those relationships you have to plan for peace. Especially when stuff gets spun up, right? When it gets spun up, man, you have to start making plans for peace because your reaction is war, right? Your emotions, your feelings, your reaction is like, you wrong me, so I'll wrong you. We get all spun up. Think about, like, just if I use the marriage context for a minute, I'll use, like, as an illustration, myself and my wife, right? So, if Ellen and I are getting a little off the rails with one another and everything else, and I don't plan for peace, what's going to be my default? My default's going to be, everything's going to be fine between the two of us once she starts doing what I think she should do. I start planning for how she should serve me. I start planning how she should respond to me and use the right words and have the right plans, and she should cut me some slack when I'm being a butt because, hey, I should be allowed to, but if she's a butt, that ain't cool and I'm going to fight it, right? So, and if I don't plan for peace, war just escalates. And at the core of the plan for peace is this. I choose to actually do what the Bible tells me to do. The Bible says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Instead of me looking at my wife and saying, hey, you need to change, which is why marriages go sideways. Right? You're not fulfilling my wants, my needs. I don't feel met or kept or cared for, and I'm going to hold you accountable to being different until I feel fulfilled. If you do that, it's just a recipe for failure. It's only when I, as the individual, say, I'm going to plan for peace. And by planning for peace, I'm going to do what the Bible tells me to do, which is it gives me a prescription as a husband. I'm going to do that. Whether she reciprocates or not, I'm going to do that. You're going to have a lot more joy doing the next right thing than choosing to live in your own pride and do the next wrong thing. That will not fulfill. That will only escalate. And again, it's the same with the parenting relationship between child and parent, right? So if you're a kid in the room and you're like, my parent's an idiot and they don't listen and they're telling me to do this and do that, like stupid, outlandish, crazy things like clean my room and, like whatever it is. And you think that's going to go well for me and your life's going to thrive if you keep that posture? Or if you go, oh, well, the Bible tells me to obey my parents and honor them and respect them. And if I do that, well, it's going to go better for you because you're doing the right thing. This is why we have to plan for peace, right? Part of it because it's not easy, but in doing that, pursuing that peacemaking, not just peacekeeping, peacemaking, there's joy. I think this all rolls into the last one, hope through righteousness. It says the hope of the righteous brings joy, but the expectation of the wicked will perish. See, what this is really getting at is you have to believe that doing the next right thing pays off. You have to do righteous things in hope that says, I take God at his word, and what his word says to do, I do because I believe it's truly going to result in a positive product in the end. So when the Bible says, wives, without a word, win your husband by the conduct of your character, you go, okay, I'm just going to believe that, because again, I would rather just unload a bunch of words, but right now I'm going to believe that that's true, and I'm going to do that righteous thing in hope. Husbands, when it says, man, you sacrifice for your wives, you go, I believe that in doing that, it's the right thing. I'm going to hope in that obedience, as opposed to, I'm not going to sacrifice for her. She's not doing anything for me, so I'm going to do my own thing. She can do her own thing, and I'm not going to make the investment. And that is not going to go well. Parents, don't exasperate your children. Oh, no, but if I don't give them a piece of my mind and a piece of my foot and a piece of my backhand and a piece of a stick, and then they don't pay attention. Well, don't exasperate them, no. Just got a righteousness and hope, right? Those are the investments that we have to make for joy. Proverbs 16:20 says, whoever gives thought to the word will discover good, and blessed, happy, joyful, is he who trusts in the Lord. That's what it takes. It just takes trust. I'm going to do the next right thing and trust that God will bless for it. That's the first thing. The second thing, though, is you have to evacuate the things that drain joy, right? Peel those crazy things out. Which means you have to start making decisions about the stuff that you know is counterintuitive or counter-joy-oriented in life. Here's two simple principles under this one. First of all, you ready? Don't do joy-sucking things. Don't do joy-sucking things. It says, he who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. What is the storyline there? Don't have kids and you'll have joy. That's what that says. No, it does say that, but that's not what I want to get at. So what that's saying is, you know why a parent doesn't have joy in a foolish child? Because they also see that the child does not have the full capacity for joy in their folly. They see the child making these decisions, and they know that it hurts, and they see the kid eroding, and it breaks their heart because they ultimately know it breaks the kid's heart from what they really want. I can't help but think about the prodigal father and the prodigal son in the Gospel of Luke, right, where this kid goes way off the rails. The father's watching this kid kind of go off the rails. He knows he's doing stupid stuff. That kid's having a ton of fun. He's having all kinds of sin gratification fun, and in the end, what's it do? It grinds him down. Doesn't satisfy him, and pretty soon he's poor and he's destitute and he's broken and he's hurting and he's ashamed and embarrassed and humiliated by his decisions and everything else. He, in other words, did joy-sucking things. And so we don't want to do joy-sucking things. Proverbs 14:16 says, one who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. We just want to make sure, hey, I don't want to do reckless and careless things that in the end it's going to cause me to feel shame, embarrassment, and a sense of failure. What's equally true to this is that we also don't want to be a joy-sucking person. Notice I didn't say don't be around joy-sucking people. Because it's real easy at this point to be like, oh yeah, don't be a joy-sucking person, and you want to elbow the person next to you. This is not a verse for you to accuse others of. This is a verse for you to apply to yourself. It says, a glad heart makes a happy face, but a broken heart, one that's bitter, angry, frustrated, or whatever, right? It crushes the spirit. It speaks with a deceitful tongue, its own agenda, its own way, its own will, its own wishes in a way that's bent and broken. And that kills joy in the lives of the people that are around you. And so don't do that. Don't be that toxin. Don't be that person that strips out the thriving of life in the lives of the people that you are around. What that means is, you know what, don't hold grudges. Don't feed negative thoughts. Don't sit there and say, I'm only going to reciprocate once they begin to obey what it is I think they should be doing, right? Don't stay the victim. Don't lick your wounds. Don't try to punish people to get them to comport to your desires. Like, all this stuff is joy-sucking. No, we need to make conscious, combative almost choices to advocate for joy. We need to do things like every day pray for it, Right, God, I need your joy. We need to every day obey the command to do it because the Bible tells us often, rejoice, have joy, be joyful. We need to choose the actions that will fuel and foster joy. We need to stay away from the things that will destroy and disrupt the potential for joy. We need to obey every call to be joyful. And I would say we need to recalibrate our lives to seek it out, to seek joy. And that's number 3 in your notes. Recalibrate where you can seek joy. And it takes some recalibration in our society, and here's why. We live in a world of upward mobility. We do. Everything's next. Next rung, next level, next grade, right? Next paycheck, next outing, next experience, next adventure. And in that next thing, it's always bigger, better, fancier, faster, more expensive, more outlandish, more ridiculous, whatever it is. So whatever vacation we took this year, next year's vacation has to be even more epic than this year. Whatever car I bought before, I need a newer, cooler, bigger, better, badder car than the previous one. Because if I'm not going upward, then there's some problem. See, this is where we get sucked in because it changes our appetites. It actually corrupts our appetites in life. And so we're left to think that the only way to true fulfillment is with more. All right? And that's destructive because that is not actually the roadmap the Bible lays out at all. But we live in this context, this society that almost just breeds that into us. I mean, I was thinking about in the 80s. In the 80s with things like prom or birth announcements or engagements, very different than today, right? Like in the 80s, here's a prom deal. Hey, prom's coming up. Want to go to prom? Sure. Cool, pick you up at 8, right? And that was it, right? Now, it's some crazy thing with skydivers and like, the whole football team lifts their shirts. Will you go to prom with me? And like everybody's in on it. And then you're like, how much are you going to spend for prom? $5,000. What? I didn't spend $5,000 on my entire honeymoon. You're going to spend $5,000 on prom? You crazy? That's prom today, man. Baby birth announcements, gender of the baby. Holy cow. Look at those videos online. In my day, it was real simple. Hey, mom, yeah, it's going to be a boy. Yeah, like that was it. Now it's like these videos of like tannerite exploding with the color of the gender of the child and everything else is just craziness, right? I asked Ellen to marry me in a park with a ring. Want to get married? Cool. That was it. Totally different now. Totally different. That's that bigger, better, cooler, hipper, whatever, that we're all immersed in. Yeah, I think we should learn from what we see in kids. It seems that God has wired into kids some things that are really helpful. This is why Jesus said, hey, the kingdom is like kids. Right? They get it at a level we don't get. And I was thinking about this with my oldest daughter, Honor, who's now 22 and she's married and everything else. But I think about when she was just a wee little one, right? And it's funny with your first kid, because you're stupid. You do everything for your first kid, you know? Like every 7 seconds you're taking a picture and you're wrapping them in bubble pack to make sure they're going to stay safe. Where by the third kid, like my son Gray, he's like, how come there's no pictures of me? I'm like, because you're the third kid. We just didn't go out of our way to do that. How come I got this big scar on my head? Yeah, I didn't even take you to the doctor. I just put some gauze on it and some tape and called it good. But like where your sister, we would have like flown in the greatest surgeon in the world to do that. But you, number 3, whatever. We're just happy you're still alive, you know? So it's totally different, right? But for your first kid, no, it's totally insane. So on her second Christmas, she was old enough to be aware, right? So we're like, oh, this is going to be so great. We're going to get her all the toys and stuffed animals and everything else. And we're going to have this awesome Christmas and everything else because you know what makes you really, really joyful in life is bigger, better, happier, fancier, shinier, newer stuff, right? So all this stuff for Honor. And we're opening the presents because she's 18 months old and we're having to do it. And this is so cool. You got a stuffed animal, you got this toy, you got all this stuff. And here we are at the end of Christmas. It's in the aftermath. She's sitting in the middle of all this stuff and she's playing with the wrapping paper and chewing on a tag of one of the things. Doesn't care about all the other stuff. It's the simplicity of just the paper and the tag. And I go, man, maybe we should learn something from the children. Simple joy. The little stuff. See, in Ecclesiastes, Again, I take you there in a more useful way. Solomon's like, I had all the experiences, all the stuff, right? And I did bigger, shinier, fancier, newer, stupider, crazier, sinful, whatever, all that stuff. Did it all. But then 5 times in Ecclesiastes, he brings up the same concept. In chapter 2, he says it this way. He says, there's nothing better for a person that they should eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This I also saw from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? Here's what he says. I built cool stuff, did cool stuff, went cool places, had tons of money, da-da-da-da-da. And you want to know where real joy is? Tomorrow for Labor Day, have a barbecue with your family. Grab your kids and just play a board game. That can be the happiest place on earth. You want to do something really cool? Just sit with your wife and have a glass of wine. Hang out with your husband and watch some weird sitcom that he likes to watch and just make it the two of you. Right? His point is, it's the little stuff. It's the little stuff. And he adds, and with God, because God is the one that gives enjoyment. If you're trying to find everything else to give you enjoyment, you will be lacking in enjoyment. Because joy flows from God, because God is the author of joy. The Spirit is the giver of joy. Jesus came to give us a joy that is remarkable and astounding, that the world cannot offer. And can I tell you, I think this comes up 5 times in Ecclesiastes because we forget so often. Throughout the thing, I got distracted by stuff. Oh, that's right, simple joy. Oh, I got distracted by things. Simple joy. I got distracted by accomplishment. Oh, simple joy again. That's why he does it. And in my life, that is absolutely true. I will tell you, this message rings more true to me than probably any other one I've done in Proverbs in this series. Because this is something that I cope with often. And because of that, unfortunately, my wife copes with often. When I said, don't be a joy-sucking person, I can tell you I say that because I'm a good at joy-sucking person with my sweet wife. And I forget the little things, and I start thinking through all the things that I hope to accomplish that I didn't accomplish, and all the mistakes that I made that I get all camped out on, and all the things that were the expectations, and those didn't come to fruition, and I can get all buried in that, and then I need, like Solomon, to be reminded, oh yeah, Matt, you know what you need to do? You need to just basically stop and enjoy simple little things. You want the world to give you more than the world is designed to give you. Where the little things can give you the joy that you need, where I can give you the joy that you need, because in me there is thriving for life. Let's go ahead and pray together. Jesus, I thank you for joyful, painful truths. Right? It's one of those messages that isn't fun, but boy, it's joyful. And I pray that we would live with that simplicity that says, you know what, I'm not going to ask the big things to fill me up. I'm going to ask my God in the context of the little, simple joys to fill me up, to be reminded of those things that I forget so often. That's why I look to you more. We thank you, Jesus, in your name. Amen.